Hi, I'm Helen and welcome to Running Rants with Helen, where I run and I rant and talk about whatever I want. I just ran my last trail race of the season at Havalina. I ran the 30K, and so I just kind of wanted to give a season recap out of like what races I did and how they went now that my trail season's over. So we got to rewind all the way back to January, which I guess is technically where I started my season. I don't know if FKTs count, but I'm counting them in this. And I ran the Cactus to Clouds trail or route, and I went for the fastest known time, and I got it. It was super cool. You start like down in the Palm Desert, like Palm Springs, and then you run all the way to the top of San Jacinto, and it's like 11,000 feet of gain. I think like 20 something miles. Yeah, there's a ton of snow, but it was super fun. And then I tried to run a mile on a bike path. I also don't know that that was a race, but I was time trialing it. I ran 5:08, so stay tuned because I'm gonna hopefully try to break 5 in the mile soon. And then I ran formidable 50K, which is a 50K pretty close to where I live in Auburn, and that was fun. I think I ran like 4:20 and I won for women, so that was exciting. Then I went to Colorado, ran Desert Rats, and that was the intended start of my season. So I ran the 50K there and I won. I think I got like top 10 overall, and I thought I could run a lot faster than I did run, but that's okay. I think I ran like 4:15, 4:16. Yeah, so Desert Rats, that was fun. I like it in Fruita, Colorado, and I don't think that there is really anything that exciting either. But I feel like a big thing that I learned this year is don't announce your race calendar, because I feel like I did, and I ended up finishing one of those races, so that's not a good track record. So then like that was all kind of to a build to run TransVolcania, which is about 50 miles or 45 miles on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands. So culturally Spain, geographically Africa. And that trip was so cool. La Palma is awesome. I would love to go back. Because like I said, I unfortunately did not finish that race. I think I only ran like, well, I was good for like 4 or 5 miles. And then it got really bad. And then I walked for a while. But I dropped out within like the first 2 hours. I like was kind of dealing with some Achilles stuff, and I was getting away with it, like where like race days were good days with my Achilles, and that day was a race day and it was a really bad day. And at first I was like, okay, like yeah, my Achilles hurts, but like I can run 45 miles with Achilles pain. But then it started like turning into nerve pain that went all the way up my leg into my back. So then I couldn't run. That was a bummer. Especially, yeah, I don't know. I was sad. Especially I feel like I had worked like all spring building up towards that race. Like the course is super cool. It was really competitive. So I was like super excited to be there. But I also feel like things kind of happen the way that they're supposed to. And then I started going to physical therapy. And now my Achilles doesn't hurt. So I feel like those are good things that came from it. And even like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of a person where things like that have to happen for me to actually do something about it, because I feel like I get away with ignoring things and then it just kind of works out, which isn't a great way to deal with injuries. And then I guess I didn't really race. I paced Western States, and so I did the Hoka High Camp Challenge. I they call it a challenge, not a race, but I still tried to race it. I got second. Ashley Rossman beat me. I've also in the past said no uphill races, but I still somehow keep running some of them. But that was fun. I remember I thought I was gonna throw up. I said, I don't know if I've ever breathed this hard. And then I ran a pretty like local race in Switzerland called Glacier 3000, because you go to the top of a glacier that's 3,000 meters. And so that was really cool, except it's kind of like a 10K road race, like just going straight uphill. And you did get to go to the top of the glacier, which was so cool. I ended up getting third, got my first big check, so that was exciting.
Physically
and
great.
Yeah, that was also unfortunately in the very middle of my UTMB training block, so I was so tired and I felt so bad like the second I started going uphill, but it was a lot of fun. And then Glacier was in August, and then I ran UTMB on September 1st. Well, actually I DNF'd UTMB on September 1st. I ran like 63 miles of it. And so that was a really big bummer, because I just feel like this whole year that was like kind of what my build was to, and like that was kind of my main focus, and it obviously did not go the way that I wanted it to. But I also feel like I learned so many important things from that. So I feel like generally, like I love my training. I love that I get to run every day, and I love like spending that time in the mountains and outside and doing long runs. And I feel like in my training for UTMB, like I lost that, which is just like not really who I am. And like I remember saying, like even at one point, like a few weeks, like maybe a week before my taper, I said like I don't even want to run this race. And I feel like when I stopped enjoying like the process of it, I started putting like a lot of pressure on the result of the race. And then like so many things that I did not expect to go wrong during that like did go wrong. Like I'm not usually one to barf during races, and I was throwing up like 5 to 6 hours, and I don't know why. And like even after mile 30, like because that's about where things started going really wrong, was like about 50K in, and like my knees really hurt and my hips, which like it's too early for that to be happening. And like I've run plenty of races, and like I've had like plenty of like long runs that were enough time on feet where like that shouldn't be happening so early. And then it's a 6 p.m. start time, and I was falling asleep like while running, so I ended up kicking a lot of rocks. I've lost one of those toenails, 2 of them are still waiting to come off. But that was just something I did not expect to happen at all. And I feel like a main like reason for why I run is joy, and I feel like I lost it in the training for that. And then like running that race, I don't expect all of it to be fun, but I was like, I am not having any fun. And now I am like walking at mile 60, and I just like didn't feel like I had a good enough reason to want to do it, because I like got through Courmayeur at mile 50, and I was like, okay, the sun's gonna rise. I mean, honestly, I wanted to drop there, but then I was like, okay, like the sun's gonna rise, like it has to get better. And then it just didn't, and it just kept getting worse. And like obviously looking back, I think that there were probably things I could have done, like with caffeine, or like trying to actually drink coffee, or like stopping to take a nap. But like I think I was just still holding on to hope for like the result that I wanted. So like I didn't feel like I had time to do those things. So yeah, I passed Arnuva, the aid station, and I had walked about a mile, and then I called my coach, who was crewing me. And I was like, yeah, I'll just walk to Champélac, which is like another 17 miles. And he was like, well, how far are you from Arnuva? And I was like, a mile. And he's like, just turn around. I was like, yeah, okay. Well, and then my phone almost died. It was like about to die. So I called him and my boyfriend Jacob, and I was like, okay, I'm like by where the shuttle buses park, and I'll be here waiting for you guys. Like, I think my phone's gonna die. And then I fell asleep on the side of the road, and they couldn't find me because I fell asleep next to a rock. And I don't know, when you're laying down, you're kind of hard to find. But they did eventually find me, and it was still fine. Sad day though. And so originally my plan was, because UTMB would have been my first 100 miler, my plan was like, okay, that's the end of my season. But I don't know, I felt like I had all this fitness, and I mean, I DNF'd 2 of the 3 races I had, well, and then I DNS. I was supposed to run San Juan Solstice. I didn't even make it there. And so then it was like, man, I had 4 races planned, and I actually only finished 1 of them. Don't really want it to end like that. So in October, I raced 4 times. So I was supposed to run Mount Baldi 5K in July, but it got postponed because there was a fire. And so that got moved to October. So I got to go run another uphill 5K race. And it was so much fun. Like I said, I kind of feel like I lost my joy and my fun in training for UTMB, but I feel like that race is exactly what I needed. And I feel like I normally wouldn't say that about A, an uphill race, or B, a 5K. But yeah, I just had so much fun, and I won, and I got 2nd overall, which was really cool. And you end at the top of a ski resort and then get to take the chairlift down in the dark, which is kind of crazy. And then the next weekend, I ran Kodiak 50K, which I have a race recap on that too if you want to watch it specifically. But yeah, I won, and that was also very fun, and I had a lot of fun like actually getting to race. And then, like I said, I'm the assistant volunteer middle school cross country coach. So we had the parent and coaches race at the championship meet, and they don't divide it between men and women. So I will say I got 2nd overall to a high school kid, which I don't even know if you're allowed to be in the parent and coaches race because you're neither a parent nor a coach. But that's fair. But for women, I won. I think Cody only beat me by like 5 seconds tops. And then to end it, I ran Havalina 30K, which is a 1 loop in the desert at night. I unfortunately got sick before, and I was like, no, I can do it. I'm gonna make it. And I was like trying hard for like 6 miles, and then I just like kept coughing. So I was like, okay, we're just gonna run, which was super fun because I got to run with some of my friends for a little bit. And then after that, Katie Asmith caught up to me, and I got to run with her. Hi. Thanks. And I got to run with her for like, I don't know, at least 10 miles. And so that was so fun. So we tied for 3rd place. Although it does seem silly like keeping track of who wins the fun run, which I kind of get when it's called Jackass now, because you're only doing 1 loop and you're passing all the people on like their 4th and 5th loops, and you're like all cheery and running fast, and you do feel like a jackass. But it is fun, and I had a great time. Yeah, I just think that something that I've kind of struggled with this year is, even as I was writing out like all the races I did this year, like on paper, it's like, okay, I either got top 3 and then I DNF'd 2 races, which like, I think objectively, like, that's not a terrible season, and like I did have success, but in my brain I feel like it's been tricky because like the previous year I feel like I didn't have the perfect year, but like my races went almost perfectly. I won Broken Arrow, and I won Speed Goat, and I set a new course record, and I got third at CCC, and like those were like all just really exciting things. And I feel like this season I did well, but like I didn't do well at like big races. And yeah, I feel like that's something I've struggled with, is feeling like, will I ever live up to the season that I had, or like was that just a one-time thing? Because I recognize like winning races is not common. Like I could, like theoretically I could never win a race again, and I don't think that's likely, but like that also then can't be a reason for doing it. And yeah, like I still think that that wasn't like the peak of my career. I feel like that was really just the beginning, but it's still like hard to not let those thoughts of like, am I as good as I was, like start to creep in, even though like I know I'm better than I was. It's just things didn't like it's particularly line up as well as they did in the past. Yeah, so in conclusion, that is a summary of my 2024 trail season.
What does that conversation look like to you? Like, is it with your coach? Is it internally? Like, how do you figure out sort of what you want to do over the course of a season? What's worth it?
I think a lot of it is internal, like what's exciting for me, and then thinking about my intentions. Because I think there's a difference between wanting to run a race and wanting to win a race. And I think you need some of both, like to win. Like you have to want to run the race regardless of how well you do, because that's not a guarantee. And so you still have to like be excited about being out there. Like I thought Havalina was gonna convince me that's the 100-miler I wanna do, because logistically it's easy and it makes sense. But then the thought of running 100 miles but only going 20 miles just like does not sound cool to me. Like UTMB, course-wise, makes sense. You run a big loop around a big mountain. The Kodiak 100-mile, big loop around a mid-sized lake. And I feel like those make sense. Point-to-point hundreds make even the most sense. You go from 100 miles away. Loops have not made sense to me. So I feel like thinking about stuff like that, and then also talking to my coach of like, within a season, what makes sense for building and choosing A races, because like, if I go run 100K, probably shouldn't run 100K like 6 to 8 weeks later. But like maybe I run a 50K and then 100K. Or like just figuring out, because sometimes I'm not the best about figuring out like, does that make sense from a training standpoint? But I come to Rick with ideas from like a joy and excitement standpoint. And then from there, we're like, okay, what makes sense?
And you also mentioned like a lot of smaller, relative to UTMB, a lot of smaller races like Desert Rats, like a mile time trial, Formidable, those kinds of things. Like, are you using those as sort of like race simulation, like where you can practice nutrition? Are you racing those as their own events, or like what's your approach going into a race like Desert Rats or Formidable?
Yeah, well, Formidable I signed up the week of because you were running it, and then I said I could run a 50K, that could be fun. And so sometimes I feel like, especially I don't really race during winter most of the time, or like in previous years, so sometimes it is good to like remember how to race and to get nervous and to pin on a bib and remember how to like wake up early and eat your race morning breakfast and just like go through all of it. Yeah, I think it's just like practicing, which I think makes it a little bit easier when those big races do come up. And then usually I use them in a build for another race. Like Desert Rats was like a long, fast run for TransVolcania. Yeah.
Cool. I think overall you had a really good year. there's definitely things that like you feel disappointed about. There's things that I think you should feel really proud of. But when you're thinking into the next year, what have you learned from this year of racing that you're gonna apply to kind of what races you decide to choose and just your overall approach to racing in 2025?
I don't know if I know my overall approach yet, but fun, trying new things, but also maybe doing some old things. I think that's kind of it. Like, I don't know what my season looks like yet, but I do know I want to run Tarawera, because I really want to go to New Zealand, and I think it'd be fun to try to run fast, because that's also a really flat course. Which is funny, I keep saying that. I feel like I said that about Desert Rats, I said that about Kodiak, like, it'll be fun to run fast. So I don't know where I'm getting that from, but I'm going with it. I'm in Broken Arrow just because, well, I just found out that it is the qualifier for the world's team for the short trail, which I don't know if I would want to qualify for short trail, but regardless, I would love to run Broken Arrow again. Yeah, every year since 2021, I've either run a race or volunteered, and I just love that race. And it's 15 minutes from my house, so it feels like it's like my local hometown race, which also just happens to like have like really good competition and prize money and the best vibes around, which is really cool. Yeah, and it's always fun too, since I live here, like I get to see so many familiar faces out on course, which always helps. And I hope there's snow this year, because that makes it a little bit more spicy. And then maybe try to run 100 miles again, but maybe one that's not UTMB. I don't know. Maybe I'll try running UTMB again someday, but I'm gonna need some time. Might take a break from France. I am qualified for OCC, so I guess we'll see about that. I don't know, it's tricky. I've been talking about this too, like, it's hard to plan a race season. Like, there's so many races, there's so many things I want to do, and then it's like sometimes you know that you like races, but then you don't want to keep doing the same thing every year. And I feel like I also have the privilege of like, I can sign up for races like a little bit later, or there's like elite entry, so I don't have to be like super on top of like registration dates. But some people have to plan so far in advance, and I can't even imagine. Like, it feels like I'm planning far in advance for like Broken Arrow and Tarawera, and Tarawera's in like February. This has been Running Rants with Helen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.